Happy Saturday, and welcome again to Tips and Strategies on How to Live More Intentionally. So, today I want to talk about the power of adjectives in our lives for shaping relationships and their success ultimately through the actions that we take because of our emotions and the way we're describing them. So think for a second, how many different emotions are you feeling throughout a day, especially those emotions that are related to your relationships. If we were sharing, if we were in person, I imagine we get a wide variety of responses, like emotions of you know feeling passionate or happy or nervous or scared, frustrated, angry, annoyed, hurt, interested, curious. I mean, the list can go on. There's so many emotions. And I never had thought about this before, but think of it. Do you know that, how you label and describe your emotions can really make or break that relationship, whether it's with your spouse or friend or family member. These emotions that we have because of circumstances or events that occur in our relationships, how we describe those emotions can greatly affect our relationship. And like I said, a few years ago, never had really considered this. The common thought that I had was, if I feel something, I just describe it. What does it matter how I describe it? I'm not like, it's not like I'm trying to lie about how I feel. I feel it and I describe it. But this wasn't entirely accurate because what I didn't realize is that even in that feeling that I have, that emotion that I have, there's not just one way to describe it. There's multiple ways to describe it. Because you see, events or circumstances in our lives don't determine our emotions. There isn't, X event equals Y emotion all the time, every time. That's not how it works. Like, events and circumstances in our life are generally neutral until we choose how we want to feel about it. Basically, we choose how we want to interpret that experience, what meaning we're giving it. So I first started to kind of learn this concept and experience it more in my life a little while ago, about a year or so ago, when Ryan and I had just started a business and our finances were not exactly where we wanted them to be, and there was a lot of uncertainty in our lives. And during this time, there was a lot of stress because of all the uncertainty in finances, and starting a business. And I found myself constantly saying this phrase. I would say, I am so stressed out of my mind. Like, I'm stressed out of my mind. And during this situation, I thought I was just stating a fact, like I didn't feel like I was exaggerating or that I was making it worse than it was, or, I honestly thought that I was stressed out of my mind. But, like I described before, the reality of it was that no, this was a neutral experience that Ryan and I were experiencing, and it could have multiple interpretations. I mean, someone else in that experience could be saying, "Wow, this is such an awesome adventure. Look at what we're learning," or "Look at this. This is such an awesome growing experience." But I was choosing to give this event a different meaning, a different interpretation. I was choosing to label this emotion that I was feeling, from the uncertainty and the growing opportunities that we were having. I was choosing to interpret those experiences as making me stressed out of my mind. And so by attaching this negative emotion, feeling stressed out of my mind, I began to act like someone who was actually stressed out of their mind. And this, greatly affected my relationship, as you imagine it would. As someone who's super stressed out, it's going to be difficult to work well with someone else. And that's what happened. So, with this idea that I was stressed out of my mind, I didn't work well with Ryan. I fought against him instead of working together, and I was constantly frustrated and angry, and just believed that my lack of happiness in our relationship in life had everything to do with the situation and not with my perception of the situation. And I probably would have continued to just blame the situation because it's easier than taking responsibility for what you're thinking and acting. But I began to realize, okay, the situation isn't really going to change anytime soon. And amongst all this, we did have dreams and goals, and I didn't exactly want to change the situation because I knew that that's what we needed to do. So I recognized that the only way that I can make things better was to change myself. So I decided, well, I'll start with something simple, because I didn't want to overwhelm myself or jump in too fast, because sometimes, the thought of changing yourself can be overwhelming. But I was like, all right, we can do something simple. And so I decided to really evaluate the words and phrases I was using to describe how I was feeling about this situation. So, like I said, I was repeatedly telling myself that I was stressed out of my mind. And by telling myself this, I was creating more emotional intensity than there actually was or needed to be. And so that increased intensity of my emotions was what was causing me to act more agitated and frustrated and discontented in my relationship and with life in general. So I took that phrase and I decided, instead of saying I'm stressed out of my mind, I would start to say, well, this is an interesting challenge. Or, I'm a bit uncertain about some things right now. So, I mean, think of those phrases and the difference between saying, I'm stressed out of my mind versus, well, this is an interesting challenge. Or I'm a bit uncertain about some things right now, but it'll work out. Like, those phrases aren't me denying the fact that I was having struggles or pretending like nothing was wrong. I was still acknowledging that this was a difficult challenge. Like, this is an interesting challenge. I'm acknowledging that. Or I'm a bit uncertain. There was uncertainty. I was uncertain, but I wasn't exaggerating that emotion or that feeling like I had been doing either. So simply by changing that phrase that I was consistently using, it was amazing. I softened that intensity with using new phrases that were still accurate to my situation, but weren't as intense, weren't as exaggerated. And because they had a softer meaning to them, my physical response in words and actions also softened and became less intense. And I was able to have more patience in our situation, and I stopped trying to blame it on anyone or anything. And I was able to focus more on, all the things that we had to be grateful for and that were going right. And then the tension, that I had created in our relationship started to diminish. And it was all simply from changing the adjectives that I was using to describe that experience and what I was feeling. So here's my challenge, my call to action for you today. I want you to think for a moment. What are 3 words that you currently use on a regular basis? 3 words or phrases that you use on a regular basis that intensify your negative feelings and emotions, especially, those feelings and emotions around relationships. So think of those 3 words and 3 phrases. So, for example, maybe you use words like, I'm so angry, or I'm depressed, or I'm humiliated, and then come up with alternative words that will lower that intensity of these negative emotions. So, instead of maybe saying I'm depressed, maybe you can say, I'm a little bit down, or I'm a little bit discouraged. Or instead of saying you feel humiliated, you could say, that I'm a little uncomfortable with how that situation was dealt with. And instead of saying I'm so angry, you could say I'm feeling a little bit peeved. And I like that one because kind of throws in, kind of interrupts that pattern a little bit by using such an interesting and kind of a fun little word like peeved, so that it helps to lower that intensity, so that you can step back a little bit from the situation and recognize, okay, yeah, that did kind of give me some unsettling feelings. I'm peeved, but it's a lot different than saying I'm so angry, because it just builds up that intensity of those feelings and emotions, which then causes us to take actions that really don't need to be taken, or probably shouldn't be taken, that don't help the situation. So I encourage you to take on this challenge. Don't let the easiness of this strategy keep you from utilizing it in your life, because it's a simple but powerful truth that the thoughts and words that we allow ourselves to consistently to cross our minds and our lips will become our beliefs, and our beliefs will shape who we ultimately become and what our relationships become. So sit down right now, write down 3 words or phrases that you use on a regular basis that intensify your negative feelings, and come up with those alternative words and phrases that you can use to soften those feelings and help you to embrace a more fulfilling and happy relationship, because I know it works. It's worked for me. So thanks for watching. I hope you're making a great day and continue living intentionally. We'll see you later.